First of all, as usual, I would like to thank Arlindo and the organizer and to congratulate all the fantastic team that Arlindo put together for their exceptional service and performance here. And also, I want to repeat what I said yesterday at dinner. This kind of meeting, this format, really gives the sense of community by putting together all the components of this community, of the diving community. And this is something unprecedented. And so I wish this diving talks long live. I didn't start early. I started earlier. This is the front page of my medical graduation thesis, 1971. I just passed 18. And you can read exploration of cardiocerebral monitoring in the diver. And that was cardiocerebral monitoring of the diver with tele-transmitted signals. So I had these fixed ideas since long. And in '73, I started doing what I could while monitoring Jacques Mayol in his 86-meter record breath hold dive, and by performing mental performance tests, digital ability performance test, and even trying what at that time was the only digital thing allowed. So measuring his heart rate with my digits, because that's what I could do at that time. Now, why are we as Dan and Dan Research Department so involved in diving research, and especially in monitoring the risks involved in decompression illness? This is where I come from. When I started collecting data, when we started collecting data about decompression illness, to our surprise, we saw that out of the many hundreds of diving decompression illness cases we collected, most of the divers, actually 60% approximately, said that they had respected every rule. So that would have been qualified as an undeserved hit because there was no mistake. The decompression rules have been respected. And so we started collecting data because that's the only thing you can do if you want to have some evidence. And we started collecting data from reliable sources, not from what the divers would tell after their dive. So we started collecting data by analyzing electronic dive profiles with a project that allowed the divers to actually send, or as we like to say, donate their dives to the database. We also monitored many, many thousands of bubbles of divers with Doppler recording so that we could compare the result of the electronic analysis of the dive profile with the bubbles. This was published in 2019 and is the result of the first 40,000 analyzed dives. At this stage, this is just before COVID ended, more or less. We are at these numbers. We have over 80,000 fully monitored dives. This also includes behavioral questionnaires, so we know what the divers did, where they dived, and so on. It involved over 5,000 divers, and the depth range, as you can see, was from 5 to 192 meters. So that includes, obviously, also technical divers. The surprise is this: when comparing these over 80,000 dives with the 538 decompression illness cases that we could monitor during this research, the end supersaturation on surfacing of the non-stricken diver was in the range of 78% of the M value as computed with the Bullman Zurich 16C model. Whereas the average, actually the median decompression, supersaturation of the lead tissue of the 538 cases was, as you can see, 86. And now you can also see a pretty interesting difference. What is this? This is a box plot, a Gauss bell. So the inner box plot here represents 50% of the population. That is the concentration of the maximum numbers. The two extremes are the outliers. So we have a group of non-stricken diver who surfaces with a concentration between 70 and 84% of the maximum allowed concentration, and a group of DCS divers who surfaces with within 83 to 90% of the maximum allowed concentration according to the current model. It's a pretty clear difference that says that diving in over this range of supersaturation according to the current Bowman tables, there is a consistent risk. I'm not surprised of this value because this is a deserved hit. I'm surprised about this value because before this, it would be undeserved according to the current modalities. If we interpret the current data we have and the 538 decompression illness cases we have now, according to these data, this is what appears. 97.5% of the data that we are collecting now are deserved according to the analysis we did. So why this happens? This is a 30-year-old plot over 21,000 dives extracted from the Bullman Aladdin computer when it first came out. This is done by Ernst Wöhrl, the engineer that developed that computer. As you can see, the vast majority of these 21,000 dives were done within 60% of the maximum allowed supersaturation. Less than 20% dived between 60 and 100, with an average of 80%, and only very few superated the M value. And so probably this is the reason why divers do not get hit so often, because divers tend to dive conservatively, essentially. When comparing the supersaturation values with the bubble production, there is another interesting aspect. In the y-axis, you see the supersaturation value. On the x-axis, you see the bubble grade, okay? So look at this. Where you hit the famous 80%, which is the border, the bubble starts to grow significantly. Below 80%, there are occasional bubbles. Over 80%, the bubbles are significant, and the more you go towards 100%, the more you are in the range of bubbles at every heartbeat and with a noise that actually overcomes the heart noises. But this is not the only issue, because we found many other situations that could not be explained very well. For example, there is a correlation between skin temperature at surfacing and bubble grades. The red line shows the increase of bubble grades from 0 bubbles to bubble grade 4, with the decrease of skin temperature from 27 to 25. So this is another thing that has to be considered. And at equal exposure, there are people who are more susceptible to decompression illness. For example, there is a gender difference. And in our population of these 83,000 dives and 538 cases, we did find that at equal exposure, females appear to be more susceptible to decompression index. And then, always at equal exposure, diving in fresh water implies a higher risk. Diving in low visibility or against strong current implies higher risk. And heavy exercise before and during the dive implies a higher risk at equal. So there are pretty many other risk factors that we need to consider besides simple exposure, depth, and time. All these data suffer from one main defect. We know what happens before and after the dive. We don't know what's happening during the dive. And this is where we are now focusing our research by trying to monitor diver condition in real time during the dive itself. And this is an example. This is the value of nitric oxide in the blood of a diver. Nitric oxide is an important factor that is also protective against the decompression stress, but I'm not going into details about that. If we take blood from a diver before and after the dive, and we measure nitric oxide through its metabolites, we would see that there is not such a difference. But if we take blood during the dive, and we did that at 42 meters in the Y40 pool in Padua, and we examine the blood sample at depth and at decompression, there is a significant increase of the nitric oxide metabolites, and this indicates a reaction, a stress reaction, an inflammatory reaction. The surprise was that we were waiting for this value to increase during decompression. We were not waiting for this value to increase at depth, but even the sample that we took at depth, so before any decompression was started, was elevated, which means probably that the dive itself, exposure to pressure itself, is something that that causes some effects on our body. So we are now trying to find modalities that would be less invasive than taking blood, and that would indicate through probably electric signals what can happen in the body, including some markers of this sort of response to decompression and compression stress. And we are monitoring the heart function, and especially the so-called heart rate variability, considering as a hypothesis that bubbles contribute as pro-inflammatory factors to the response to the dive, to the compression, and to the decompression stress. And we have developed a model. This is a model so far, so nothing proven on humans. We have developed a model that allowed us to predict a certain amount of bubbles with respect to a certain kind of dive profile as measured through the variation of this cardiac function, that is the heart rate variability. It has nothing to do with bradycardia or tachycardia. It's the interval between two peaks in milliseconds, and it changes according to various parameters. This is the simulation of an aggressive dive, and the response of the heart rate variability would have predicted bubbles to peak very soon after surfacing, and then to decrease slowly in relatively high number. We had an estimation of 600 bubbles per frame, per echocardiogram frame. Whereas while doing a more conservative profile, the estimation of production of bubble as derived from the analysis of the HRV, of the heart rate variability, was that bubbles would appear later, peak later, and be less in numbers. We then did the same dives, the same profiles in Y40, and monitored the bubbles with echocardiography, and we actually saw very similar results. So this is a promising kind of analysis that we are trying to implement. But this is an analysis of an electric signal, essentially of a data that can be seen from an electrocardiogram. And how can you get an electrocardiogram from a diver? Obviously, if you wire the diver, that's very easy. But wiring divers is not the ideal thing. Having divers on a leash is not what we want. We did that with this CADI project, which is a project that concluded two years ago and was funded by the European Union. And this is what we were seeing. So we were seeing breath rate, electrocardiogram, body movements, and so on. Exciting. But wiring a diver has limits, obviously. So we have to go wireless. And what can we use to go wireless? The most common wireless communication model is Bluetooth, but Bluetooth works centimeters in the water. Then there is light. Light has difficulties. Now there are promising technologies, but so far light cannot assure anything more than 10 meters. And so we have to recur to sound. Sound, if you have a line of sight, can allow up to 3 kilometers transmission of electric data. And we use it by the so-called acoustic modem technology, which transforms electric into sound and sound into electric. The vision is this. We envisage a diver wearing wearable sensors, being able to transmit the parameters, his vital and performance parameters, to a transducer on the surface that would then be connected with by GSM or satellite network to the world, to the internet. We started this in 2019 by implementing a prototype. This is the diving team diving in the Maldives. As you can see, it's a real prototype. I mean, we were using plastic boxes and other things to put the sensors inside, and we were using a normal wearable computer transmitting data to the underwater receiver. This is a screenshot of my phone. I was in Italy. They were in the Maldives, 10,000 kilometers away. I received that message with the geolocation. If I could click the geolocation, I would see where the diver was. I could ask the diver, sending a short message, if they were active or not, and they would answer by saying, yes, I am active, and we are diving at the depth of 5 meters, and everything is okay. Obviously, they could also answer, no, I'm not active. This is what they saw on the display that they had in the prototype. So this means respondi, answer to Marroni. And, but they could also say, no, I'm not okay. I need help. Again, there is the geolocation. This is where they were. And we could send them messages by saying, this is just an example, stay calm, we know where you are, we will be assisting you. Then we started also putting electrocardiogram electrodes on our volunteer, and this is the prototype of the data receiver with a acoustic modem on top. And again, at 10,000 kilometers away, I would receive their geolocation, but at the same time, I would also receive their depth. We are at 5 meters. their RR interval that allows us to measure the HRV, that parameter that I was mentioning before, and their heart rate, BPM, all through the dive, 5 meters by 5 meters, with geolocation on descent and on ascent. We tested this system with some special forces of the Italian armed forces. You can see that they cannot be. And this is them wearing the prototype. Obviously, this was of special interest for the special forces because they could see where they were and whether they were okay or not. And so there are obvious strategic interests for that. Then from the prototype, we have to develop affordable and functional wearable devices that would allow for data transfer. And we are developing what we call the Diving Telemedicine 2022 by having an underwater sensor. This receives the signal from the dive computer and analyzes the dive profile. So to allow for the electronic dive profile, this is the acoustic modem. It is tested up to 150 meters. This is the surface receiver, and this is the control center that would receive the signals up from the diver everywhere. The next step of the wearable device by the diver will also have the display, and so that by this bidirectional communication, we can not only analyze what's happening to the diver and what kind of dive risk the diver is taking, but also analyzing probably the best ascent profile that the diver should follow, also by integrating data with the physiological data that we are receiving. And where are we receiving them from? From a simple intelligent t-shirt that can measure body temperature, electrocardiogram, breath rate, and even oxygen saturation, even if now we cannot do it underwater. We are planning on a oxygen saturation meter on the mask, actually. And this transmits to the underwater receiver, to the underwater acoustic modem. The first transmission is done by Bluetooth from the wearables to the underwater acoustic modem. Then it's sent to the surface through sound, reconverted by the other receiving acoustic modem, sent by Bluetooth to a specific app, and sent to the control center via internet. The system is not an app. It's a web-based system, so all you need to do is to log in with your password. It's already working. We have already quite many divers who are connected. They have their own page, they have their own login, and they can see their own dives and their own parameters if they wear the wearable top. The smart garment is something very comfortable. It comes in all the best possible sizes. The dive sense device is operative up to 150 meters, I could say. As I said, the smart garment has a very long battery life and actually allows even for continuous electrocardiogram data recording up to 24 hours. And it's all compatible with a proprietary app that is now compatible only with Android that we are soon making compatible also to iOS. What happens when you wear this? So far, we can do this under a dry suit because the sensors are not yet waterproof, but we are getting there. When you dive the sensorized top under the dry suit, the data transmitting device transmits data to the sensor, to the wearable sensor of the diver, and then transmits them up to the surface. This is an example in Y40. We are at the bottom of the pool. The diver wears the dive sense, which is the dive profile analyzer that also receives the data from the top that the diver is wearing under the t-shirt. And we have his data up the surface as well as his position. And these are the data that we can receive. This is the heart rate, this is the breath rate, this is the electrocardiogram. As to the dive data, they are monitored in real time. What we have is obviously the monitoring of the time and depth couplet with the analysis based on the Bullman Zurich 16C model. The data are very light. One dive is 10 kilobytes only, so it's very easy to transmit them through the internet, through the GSM, and so on. And they all go with the same system to the app, and from the app to the health portal. This is an example of the feedback that the diver receives as soon as can connect to the portal and to the portal and to the internet when surfacing, and not to this level of definition, also can receive as a feedback underwater through the acoustic modem bridge. We have devised an index of risk, as you can see, made with colors, so that up until here it's safe. When it starts getting green and then orange and then red, it means that the diver is approaching a dangerous area in terms of estimated or achieved supersaturation on surfacing. This system also allows to study the dive afterwards, so it's also very well compatible with briefing and debriefing and teaching the diver what they should do best. It indicates the actual dive, it can indicate the ideal dive, and the threshold limits as the diver can set by adjusting the gradient factors. And this column here indicate the lead tissue, the most supersaturated tissue at the end of the dive. So this is the system. The system implies a diver wearing wearable sensors, using a dive risk analyzer. I don't call it anymore deco risk analyzer. Now I call it a dive risk analyzer that would also interact with the diver's dive computer, if compatible. All the data are transmitted to an app that the diver has on his or her mobile phone or tablet, and that can transmit immediately to the telemedicine then health portal, where we can also have 24/7 medical personnel on duty. And this is working and allows for a bidirectional communication between the diver and the dive site and the control center. We are doing field tests. This has been done in May in Dubai, Deep Dive Dubai. That is the receiving buoy. That is the final form of it. This is the acoustic modem. This is the dive sense with its electronics inside. And this is a diver testing it in shallow waters. You will see a hand, it's my hand, telling the diver which position to take, whether vertical, horizontal, or so on, so that we could monitor in real time what the system transmitted to the receiving, let's say, to mission control. Now, this diver was happy about, because she had just finished testing this prototype. with her nice buoy and her transmitting device here connected with the sensorized top, so the physiological monitoring under the dry suit. This is the app that is connected via Bluetooth to the buoy, but we are out of the water now, so Bluetooth has a wider range. And this is the control center, which is physically close to the phone, but the communication between here and here is through the internet. We tested this with a team of police divers in Venice in May, and they were using, as you have seen, they were using a rebreather, an oxygen rebreather, front-mounted. They were diving not under the buoy, as it was in the pool. We were afraid that the signal in the sea would have been worse, but it was the contrary. It was much better than in the pool because of no resonance and so on. And actually, the divers were about 200 meters horizontally away from the buoy here, and we had all the data of the three divers together on the screen of the alarm center, of the control center. And this was done last 3 weeks ago with a deep dive, a deep technical rebreather dive. It was a very deep, not a very deep dive, but it was an 80-meter dive on an airplane wreck offshore Palermo. And the system worked very well. The buoy was under the boat. They were in the range of 200 meters at the depth of 73 meters. And this is what we were receiving at the alarm center, where we could see that the diver was at 73 meters, the heart rate, the breath rate, and following the diver on the ascent. And here we have the display that we could see when the diver was decompressing, again, with vital parameters and evaluation of the dive risk altogether between the exposure and the vital parameter response. Now we are enhancing the web-based portal functions, because a system like that can obviously be very useful in many circumstances, not only underwater. Actually, it works without the same problem, without many problems underwater that we have underwater. So we are also using it to support excursions, extreme activities, and remote activities. We tested with the Italian National Emergency Services for ski slope rescue. And in order not to undress the victim on a ski slope in adverse environment, we changed the top, the wearable, with wristbands that are connected with the transmitter. And this for the medical, recreating the Eindhoven triangle so that we can have all the data. And we can have the same data, essentially the vital data of any victim. In this case, the victim was also wearing the oxygen saturimeter. And we, as usual, we had all the data on the mobile, and they were transmitted to the Mission Control Alarm Center in Florence. They were in the Apennines, pretty far. With immediate interaction between the local bystanders and the local rescue team and the doctors on call at the Mission Control Center. These are the data that can be retrieved. Obviously, once you do this underwater, you can also apply it to climbing, excursioning, sports activities, and even home care. And we are also working with our national health system to apply this telemedicine modality to home care and so on, because I think that if we can do something underwater, there are very little places where we cannot replicate it. Thank you very much.